Mint Street has a new boss. Urjit Patel has officially assumed charge at the RBI as India's 24th governor. Dr. Patel, who has maintained a contrasting low profile versus his predecessor Raghuram Rajan, has his immediate task fully cut out. The questions, though, are what are going to be the big challenges ahead for Urjit Patel and what are some of the policy moves that the new governor will really focus on? Welcome to Patel Takes Charge. I'm Supriya Shrinate, and joining me on this very special show, I've got Keki Mistry of HDFC, I've got Siddharth Sanyal of Barclays, I've got Dr. Rajiv Kumar, and of course, Swaminathan Ayyar, consulting editor. Thank you, each one of you, for being with us. We really appreciate you taking time out and speaking to us as Dr. Urjit Patel takes charge as India's 24th RBI governor. Keki Mistry, let's begin with you. You've got your skin in the game on things that he's going to talk about and make policies on. As the 24th RBI governor, what do you believe are the key challenges ahead for Urjit Patel?
I think he inherits a ship which is very stable. My sense is he will have to ensure that the currency continues to remain strong. We've seen the rupee as one of the strongest currencies in recent years. He will have to handle the liquidity situation carefully, ensuring that there is enough liquidity in the system. At the same time, ensure that inflation doesn't get out of control. And I think very importantly, he has to bring confidence in the banking system to lend to industry, because my sense is that over the next 6 months or so, 6 to 9 months, we will see a big spurt in private sector investment. And when we do that, we need a strong public sector banking platform to be able to provide the funds that industry requires, private and public sector both, of course.
So, let's bring this entire debate to you. I know Mr. Mistry has really set the tone as far as his challenges are concerned, but let's just step back and realize what has happened in the last 1.5 or 2 months. The government has completely endorsed the MPC. Members will be announced soon. Inflation target has been endorsed by the government as well at 4 plus minus 2%. Does it really prove that the government had a problem more with Rajan, the man, and not his policies so much?
I think that is correct. I was told that Modi and Raghuram Rajan had a number of one-on-one sessions, and that in those sessions, Rajan was able to convey very clearly, and Modi accepted, that monetary policy should not be a political matter, and it's better done at a technocratic level. I think the two had agreed on that. I suspect that what Modi was not happy about was that Rajan, on the one hand, was extremely prominent and all over the television, all over the media. And I don't think Modi liked that. And secondly, Rajan was talking on all kinds of issues other than monetary policy. And I don't think Modi liked that either. So I think the main source of friction was things other than monetary policy. I think on monetary policy, I think they were on the same page. Therefore, I would expect, I think that is why I think Urjit Patel was chosen, to show that, we are okay with that monetary policy. We just want that monetary policy, but with a very low-key governor. And that is exactly what Urjit Patel, I think, is going to be.
It's interesting you say that continuity is required, and the government did put its weight behind what was being done at the RBI. The prominence of Raghuram Rajan perhaps is something that New Delhi was uncomfortable with. Is that a proposition you essentially agree with Dr. Rajiv Kumar there?
Yeah, you are on the right track broadly when you say that, because the Prime Minister has been very clear that he thinks of inflation as a cost to the poor, as a burden on the poor, and he's very clear about trying to rein it in. What he could do, what he may have wanted differently, is to try and tackle inflation, food inflation especially, more from supply side measures rather than from controlling aggregate demand, and which is where I think the government and the RBI will have to work very closely together to make sure, and Mr. Urjit Patel will have to convince his counterparts in the North Bloc to take all those steps that are needed to rein in food inflation, which is not amenable to demand side controls and needs very specific supply side measures to keep it down. And I think the government and the RBI would do well to work together on that one issue in terms of controlling inflation.
All right, both Swami and you have been candid, but let's get the economist on board. And Siddharth Sanyal, the question is really coming your way. The fact that there is a lot of agreement now, the fact that the Prime Minister spoke about curtailing inflation by the RBI from the ramparts of Red Fort in his Independence Day speech, does it give the governor, the new man in charge, a lot of comfort to begin with? Because his mandate is price stability and the government seems to be endorsing that.
Oh yes, certainly yes, a big comfort. In the last 1 month, you have seen the government very clearly announcing and endorsing the 4% plus minus 2 inflation target, which before Governor Rajan leaving is a big relief for the RBI as well as for the new governor. So I think that part is very positive. And the next job on his platter will be to formalize the MPC. And our understanding is that he has, or rather RBI, along with government, is making decent progress towards announcing and formalizing it.
Keki Misri, let's take this question with you. There's two scenarios in which the two men took up their jobs. Raghuram Rajan or Urjit Patel are very different. Urjit Patel, for instance, inherits far more stable macroeconomic conditions, though he may not be so lucky with a benign commodity regime like Rajan was towards the last 1.5 years of his tenure. How do you believe that is going to change the contours of his own monetary policy?
So he obviously, as I said, will not get the advantage of falling commodity prices. In my sense, he won't get an advantage. Crude prices may probably, may even start inching up over a period of time. But having said that, with good monsoons, food prices should be lower. On the supply side, a lot of work has been done by the government in terms of creating infrastructure. So that should help the pass-through of the good monsoons to start, reflecting in supply side, easier supply side, and that should therefore reduce food prices. And food is a very large component of the consumer inflation basket. So therefore, with lower food prices, I still think that inflation may be a little benign. But having said that, we must take into account a couple of things. One is that the good monsoons will also result in more money in the hands of people, which would lead to more consumption, number one. And number two, the pay commission hike, which has put so much money in the hands of people, that will also lead to more consumption. So demand side issues or demand side, on the demand side, the increase in demand may be quite a bit. That could put a little bit of inflationary pressure. So you'll have to manage things carefully. A 0.25% cut in rates is possible, but I don't think we could do much more than a 0.25% without waiting and watching and seeing what actually happens in the economy.
All right, Swami, come in on that, and I want to spend some amount of time here because the Monetary Policy Committee or inflation targeting or the new regime that we're talking about, the CPI, are largely based on Urjit Patel's own reports. And I want to spend some time there, Swami, because the MPC, many people believe, has made the role of a governor redundant, if not less critical, as far as interest rate management is concerned. But do you believe, on the contrary, the government will have a casting vote? He will decide if there is ever an issue put to vote. Is he really going to be driving monetary rate regime?
No, the governor, because he has a casting role, his role is superior to that of the other members. But clearly he cannot always have his way. That much is clear. So I do not think you will often get a revolt against the governor. I think by and large the governor will have his way. The point is the governor can't just railroad whatever he wants through this committee.
Dr. Kumar, what is your take on this entire debate? Does Monetary Policy Committee make the role of that one single individual less relevant, at least takes the pressure off that one man alone who has to decide on India's rate regime? Or do you believe he will still continue to drive what the MPC or the course that the MPC really takes?
Well, more over and above the casting vote, which you say is of course important, the personality of the governor, the inclination of the governor, the sort of overall tone that he sets for the Monetary Policy Committee meetings will of course influence the working of the Monetary Policy Committee. After all, it will be the governor who will present to the MPC all the data that he would marshal, that the RBI would marshal on inflation, inflationary expectations, on what they see as the as the future of the growth economy, etc., and maybe other variables. So, while yes, it is no more the governor who is, solely responsible for the monetary policy in the country, he will have a fair amount of influence and bearing on the working of the monetary policy, despite the fact that he will be one of the 7 of the committee members. But do also remember that even during the previous regime, there was a technical advisory committee. Now, agree that it was an advisory committee and there was no voting and there was no public disclosures of what the deliberations were. The technical advisory committee had some role in designing the contours of the monetary policy. So what I'm trying to say is yes, the governor has a more limited role, but nonetheless the governor's own biases and own targets do count for a little more than just the casting vote that he will exercise.
Siddharth Sanyal, you agree with that? The governor's own personality, his own role, his own biases will have a bearing on what the Monetary Policy Committee really does? With that, of course.
Yes, the role of the RBI governor can never really be less important. My sense is that given that you will have a formal MPC and the monetary policy decision will be based on voting, more often than not it will be much more objective, and the committee members will be coming out with their opinion. So the majority decision will prevail. So the constitution of the MPC, the credibility of MPC going ahead will be of immense importance. But not to forget the other factor, that in case if there is a tie, there will be the role of governor again with a casting vote. So to a great extent, a lot of responsibility will still lie on his shoulders.
Of course, the assumption here is that there will never be a tie and people will form monetary policy with consensus. But KK Mistry, if I may ask you that quick question, I mean, apart from the role that the RBI governor is going to play, and he's going to be the first RBI governor to oversee a monetary policy committee, the straight question is on interest rates. What sort of an elbow room do you believe the Indian economy has right now for rates to be reduced this fiscal?
All right, so if you ask me, is there room for a rate cut? Perhaps yes. Given the fact that we've had very good monsoons and therefore we will see hopefully some reduction in food prices over time, or at least we will not see a rise in food prices. So we don't see any significant trends which would point towards inflationary pressure in the coming months, excepting perhaps that from the global standpoint, commodity prices probably have bottomed out. So the advantage we got the last year or so in terms of falling commodity prices, falling oil prices, that advantage may not be there in the coming year. But having said that, because of the good monsoons and expectation of perhaps lower food prices, one doesn't see anything today in the horizon which would make you believe that inflation will shoot up sharply. So a 0.25% cut in rates in the coming 1 or 2 policies is something which is possible. I would say a 0.25% cut and then wait and watch and see what happens.
KK Mistry, just before I take this forward with the others, let me also ask you, you mentioned the point about credit offtake. And for that to happen, banks really have to be in good shape. And one of the lasting legacies of, Raghuram Rajan has been the war he took against NPAs. But there are 2 camps out there. One that believes that the deep surgery should be continued by Urjit Patel, and the other that believes that with this better understanding, quote unquote, of AQR, he can afford some amount of tinkering to bring in some relief for the banks that have been a part of the cleanup exercise. Which camp do you belong to here?
Well, to be very honest with you, I would be on the second side in the sense that I have seen over the years, if you go back to 2009, things in India in 2009, things globally were bad. And obviously India also things were not great. We had seen job losses happening in the system. And if we had done a similar kind of asset quality review at that point of time in 2009, we probably would have seen a similar sort of situation, or maybe even a worse situation, because in 2009, for the first time, and probably the only time, we've seen job losses in India. So my sense is, as economic activity in India picks up, which happened in the latter part of 2009 and then 2010, a lot of these asset quality issues, a lot of these NPAs tend to get resolved on their own. So I would believe that a significant portion of the NPAs will get resolved by themselves over a period of time, as the investment cycle in India picks up, as economic activity sort of starts booming, which I think will happen. So some problems will remain. Maybe 40% of the current problems in the banking system may remain, and those will have to be tackled on a case-to-case basis.
All right, without saying it in as many words, KK Mistry, you're essentially saying that he needs to take his foot off the pedal a little. Swaminathan Iyer, do you agree with KK Mistry there?
No, I think the cleaning up of the banks is a long-term thing which will continue. I have a sinking feeling that the number of bad loans and the number of dubious loans is far larger than has been admitted so far. So I think the process is going to be quite long. It will have to be done. Actually, what sometimes worries me is that if we now have a whole number of new banks coming, and Rajan's final act more or less was to say we are going to have new banks on tap. No, I'm not quite sure whether that tap is wide open or trickle or what. But if you get a large number of new banks coming in, all competing for a limited amount of business, can we get into a problem once again of reduced lending standards that worsens the NPA problem? I think that is one of the things I worry about, and I think Governor Urjit Patel needs to worry about.
That's a fair fear that you're putting on the table, but Siddharth Sanyal, one of the unfinished agendas, and I want to spend some more time on the NPAs and get every view on the table here. The unfinished agenda of Raghuram Rajan is completing the deep surgery of banks. Do you believe the big challenge for Urjit Patel is going to be to relent a little, that he will perhaps be tempted and be under pressure to do, or to follow suit with utmost urgency because he was, after all, party to these decisions that were made?
We really would have to wait and see what the new governor comes and says sometime during his first few days or first few weeks to get a clear sense on that. Now, there one would have to strike a very, very important and important balance. On one hand, there is a very clear need to clean up the banking system. On the other hand, when the economy is not on the best of health for a while, there is some natural pressure on banks, and if you handhold the banks and corporates for a while, you actually get better results a few years down the line. So there is a fine balance to be struck, and we really will be waiting for the new governor's guidance on that.
All right, so tinker a little, it's a long-term process, fine balance. Everybody's skirting around the bush and nobody's saying, should he take his foot off the pedal? Rajiv Kumar, do I expect you to call a spade here? Do you believe the cleanup should continue, but Urjit perhaps needs to relent a little?
I think he would do well to take the foot off the pedal to some extent, at least not press it down further, because as I have written before, you do need to tackle NPAs in the longer term. You don't want to perform a surgery which will leave the patient sort of kaput, and and cyclical recoveries do tend to take care of NPAs to a certain extent. So my own understanding is that Urjit will do well to take care of the flows going forward, to make sure that there is no sort of greening of loans in the future. There are no non-feasible loans. There is no political pressure on the banks to make advances to particular houses, etc. But the problem of the stocks of the accumulated non-performing assets can be tackled in a longer time frame, so that growth and employment generation are not unduly hampered, which is what may be happening at the present moment.
All right, so let's put an end to the NPA debate and turn focus on what many people believe will be the litmus test or the big challenge that Urjit Patel is really going to debut on. That will be FCNR redemptions. Siddharth Sanyal, the view in the market is that there was some amount of concern earlier, but that concern seems to have evaporated. We've got adequate reserves. Do you still believe that the fear is lurking somewhere in the back of people's minds? What happens with FCNR redemptions? We have the Forex, we understand that, but could there be potential defaults, and is that going to be the big test for Urjit Patel?
Well, it's a big event. If say $20 billion plus dollars maturing in about 2 months' time, October, November, it's a significant event. Looks like the RBI is well prepared for that. They have actually put in place the dollar inflows, the swap windows are active. So as things stand today, it looks like the risks are relatively less. Having said that, it's a big event and one need to be very, very careful till the end.
All right, it's going to be a big event and we'll have to wait and watch out how the RBI does play its role. But KK Mistry, you had made a point about currency to begin with when I had asked you the immediate challenges and the priority areas for the new governor. The rupee has been remarkably stable, in a stable territory at least. No crests, no troughs that we've seen. But there is obviously an imminent rate hike by the US Fed that's lurking around the corner. And it is always given to global vagaries. Do you believe that the RBI should increasingly let the currency be driven by market forces? Or should it continue to intervene? I'm just asking a banker par excellence to give me his view there.
No, I think the RBI should play some role in managing the currency, is my view. We saw that in 2013 when when the rupee was really getting smashed around in July, August, and we saw the rupee go to as high as whatever, 67.5, 68 levels. It was completely unjustified. So market forces sometimes can result in speculative pressure in the overseas market, which then creates its pressure on the currency. And any significant weakening of the rupee will certainly lead to inflationary pressure. So I think RBI has to carefully manage the currency.
Dr. Kumar, the other big area that people have been speaking about and a lot has been written about is the corporate bonds. I mean, that is perhaps one of the last hurrahs of Raghuram Rajan there. A lot of people are worried that the RBI could end up diluting its own balance sheet. I mean, till now it's been impeachable, impeccable as far as government securities are concerned. And now this whole era of accepting corporate bonds is perhaps going to be a dilution of its own balance sheet. The larger question there, Dr. Kumar, is that how should Urjit Patel ring fence the RBI's balance sheet and still usher in a reform? It's going to be a tough balancing act, but how would you expect the new governor to do so?
I think the ring fencing that he would have to do is to ensure that that only the corporate bonds of the AAA rated private sector companies are used as collateral, and that he would insist upon all these corporates who have gone through a fairly rigorous round of credit rating before the bonds are accepted as collateral by the RBI. I think it's a very big move, and I think it's the right move. The bond market in India has to be developed, but at the same time, I think it's important that the RBI doesn't allow its balance sheet to be diluted beyond the point, and therefore it should take steps to ensure to ensure the credibility and the credit worthiness of the corporate bonds that it accepts as collateral.
All right, if I may move away from the monetary policy and from the intricacies of economy and finance that Urjit Patel is a master of and will deliver on, and talk to you about the man himself. Swami, let me begin with you. They're in quite a contrast, a study in contrast actually. Urjit Patel, extremely low profile, Rajan, extremely high profile. But both, of course, know their subject, and which is why they are in their jobs. Do you think Urjit Patel will stand up to fight for the independence of the RBI? That seems to be a point of concern, not just in the central bank, but also on the street.
Yes. I think on that, in fact, the reason he will be able to stand up is I think Modi himself accepts the need for that. They would not have had this change in the RBI Act if that was not the case. You now have monetary policy being set by a committee. It is no longer somebody who is going to send a telephone call to tell the RBI to do this and do that. So it has been institutionalized. So I take it, therefore, that the government has decided that we have to depoliticize monetary policy. We can put a viewpoint, yes, to the finance ministry, but at the end of it all, it should be done institutionally by a monetary policy committee. That clearly has been agreed to. Therefore, I think there should be really no problems on that front politically.
KK Mistry, I know Urjit Patel is someone who's known very well to you, but he's an extremely low-profile man, extremely silent, doesn't like to mingle too much with the media, has been rather low-profile so far. Does the new governor need to focus a little more on opening up, a little more on communicating more, you believe? Because markets like to hear RBI governors.
Well, I don't know. I think he has to do a job, and he does his job well. As long as he does his job well, which I'm sure he will, I don't know whether it's so important for him to be that communicative or keep talking to the market. But I mean, it's good for the market to know what he's thinking of, which I'm sure he will do.
So that's Anyal. As somebody who watches and weighs words said by the RBI governor to form his reports, somebody who interacts with the RBI to figure out what's going on in the governor's mind, why he said what he said and what he left unsaid, is communication going to be the big challenge for Urjit Patel?
Communication is very, very important for any RBI governor, and in the last few years, the role of communication, the RBI has also emphasized a lot. So the role of communication will remain very, very important, and on quite a few things, we are also waiting for the new governor's communication, and it will be so going ahead in the coming days as well.
Trust me, all of us are waiting for the new governor to communicate, and we do hope he's going to communicate rather soon. But a quick closing comment from you, Dr. Kumar, there, and it's only fair that you have the last word on this show because you were part of the committee that recommended his name. He is completely in contrast to what Raghuram Rajan was. Rajan was a master with words. Many people thought he paid for his job by being so open like he was. Urjit is conspicuously silent, very, very accomplished, but extremely quiet. Do you believe he needs to work on this communication that we just spoke about? And like Siddharth was pointing out there, markets like to listen to RBI governors. They need to know what's going on in the governor's mind. Will being open be a big challenge and also a big opportunity for Urjit Patel?
Let me take the second question first, and I, in that respect, want to point out to you that Alan Greenspan or Bernanke or Janet Yellen or Kuroda in Japan or the governor of the People's Bank of China, none of them are great communicators, none of them are public, none of them are sort of public intellectuals. But yet the few words they utter, and the smaller the number of words they utter, the greater the import they have for the market. In fact, Greenspan was known to be speaking in mysterious ways, uttering a few sentences here and there, and yet driving the markets in the direction that he wanted them to drive. So being very eloquent is not necessarily a characteristic or a necessary quality of a central bank governor. The central bank governor is meant to is seen as a guardian of the technical capability of the government, and therefore meant to be somebody who would sort of who would make the government work in a technically feasible manner. So eloquence and being a public intellectual is not, in my view, a necessary quality of the governor, and I think Urjit Patel therefore would do very well as he is to be reticent and yet be very pointed and utter those crucial words which he would want to do to ensure that the markets retain the confidence that they must have if growth is to be propelled. Now, the second part of your question was about the autonomy of the RBI. I am not very sure about this concept about the autonomy of the RBI. Why would what does this implies somehow that the political leadership of the country is not to be trusted, and that the RBI is the sole guardian of the economic of the economic rationale of the economic rationality of the government. I'm not so sure of that. I think the governor, the RBI and the government should work together, and as I have often emphasized, an iterative process of the two working in sequence with one after the other is far more costly and far more ineffective than there would be there'd be a sort of convergent working of the two together. So my own take is that the governor RBI is a very crucial and important member of the government's macroeconomic management team, and I would hope that Urjit Patel, with his background of having worked in the government for a while and having also worked in the corporate sector, would see the importance of being a good team member, a very effective one, a very persuasive one, but yet a team member and not somebody who is going to stand out for the RBI's autonomy, whatever be the cost. That I think is quite disruptive as far as I can make out.
All right, on that note, thank you very much, each one of you, for joining us. Dr. Rajiv Kumar, Keki Mistry, Siddharth Sanyal, and Swaminathan Iyer. It's indeed a pleasure chatting with all of you. Urjit Patel takes over as India's 24th RBI Governor. He has his task cut out. And we at ET Now will continue to get you news and views that matter from the RBI. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.